Mic check. Makaklaro ako. See. So open sa ako atong mga materials. So our topics for today will be covering homogeneous differential equations and exact equations. So for homogeneous equations, we'll be solving it using a different method compared to atong um, separable variables. Pero we'll be using the same concepts sa separable variables sa atong homogeneous. And for exact equations, medyo dali ra siya, but at the same time, dili pa nato na siya i-ignore if sayon na siya. Kay napay times na malisod siya kadyot. So mag-share screen sa ko. So medyo taas lang ni siyang mga topics. So if ever na may questions, pwede mo mag-ask anytime. Kay I'm sure if mawala mo ani, mawala gid mo sa ubang topics kay dire ta maabot sa murag mas lisod na mga problem sets. Asa i-load sa kwan. So for homogeneous functions, we have polynomials in which all terms are of the same degree, such as the following equations. So previously we talked about the order, wherein the order is the highest derivative in the differential equation. Ang degree is the highest variable exponent in the equation, or the most variables within each polynomial. So what we mean by this is, let's say for example, we have x squared minus 3x plus 4y. So how can we break this down? We could say this is x times x minus 3xy plus 4y y. So we can say they are the same degree. We have two, for our first polynomial, we have two x's. So we could say this is a degree 2. Kaning 3xy, we could say this is also a degree 2. Even though lahi sila variables, we can say na, we can count them as one variable each. So if this is 1x and 1y, we could say this is a degree 2. So for 4y squared or 4yy, since there are two y's, we could also say this is a degree 2. So kada ato i-note, why is this important for homogeneous functions? One of the conditions for homogeneous functions is dapat all terms are the same degree. Kani ang importante i-note. Now, nano importante ni siya i-note? When we're done with all the topics for solving differential equations na first order, I'll be asking you guys to solve the differential equation. Dili na ko mag-ask unsay, or dili na ko mag-provide unsay method atong gamiton. Ang ako lang ihatag sa inyo is the differential equation. I-determine din ninyo unsa siya nga method inyong gamiton. So for example, for separable variables, we know na we have functions m of x dx plus ny dy is equal to 0. If ang atong function of x only contains x and our function of ny only contains y, we can say separable variables sila. So what about for homogeneous? Kanya ato i-note. We need to note na all terms are of the same degree. So for example, equation 1, x squared minus 3xy plus 4y squared, na siya 2 degrees, 2 degrees, 2 degrees. So same na sila throughout the equation. So what about x cubed plus y cubed? So ang ilang degree is 3. Ang degree dayon sa y cube is 3, which means we have the same degree, which means na homogeneous polynomials ni sila. So again, same for x raised to 4y plus 7y raised to 5. We could say this is 5. We can also say this is degree 5. Now, ato lang skip aning medyo complicated na part and diretso ta sa kaning theorem. So what we need to know for homogeneous coefficients, if mxy and nxy are both homogeneous and of the same degree, the function mxy over nxy is homogeneous of degree 0. So previously we talked about mx, n, and y. So for any homogeneous, we're also given a function mxy. So unsa ang pasabot ani? Ang pasabot niya na mxy, this means now we have a function of m with variables x and y. Nagi sagol sa equation. Let's say dx over dy. So gisagol siya, so na value variables na x ug y. This means now we can't use separable variables since giosa ang mga different variables. So what this theorem states is if they are the same degree, kung i-divide nimo ang iyang functions, makuha ninyo degree 0. This is to test if same sila og degree. So we could say x squared plus y squared over, let's say, xy plus xy. Kung atong kuha na ning mga degree, we have 2, 2, 2, and 2. So mo fit siya sa theorem 2.1, so we could say they are homogeneous. And we can also say they are of the same degree. So why is this important? Because when relating to theorem 2.2, if a function xy is homogeneous of degree 0 in x and y, function f x and y is a function of y over x alone. So let us assume a variable y is equal to vx. Then theorem 2.2 states that if function f with respect to x and y is homogeneous of degree 0, f x of y is a function of v alone, which means we have function f of y, f x y is equal to f x vx. Kaya gi-substitute nato ang value of y to vx. Ato dayon i-remove ang x from the equation, so we can say the function is 1 with v, which is equal to function of 1 with v, in which the x is now playing this role taken by lambda, and the function f x y depends on v alone. Now, libog ni siya paminahon at first, pero once i-try natin ni siya i-solve, medyo magkuha na yung taog idea og and sound ni siya i-proceed. So, let's start with equations with homogeneous coefficients. So if medyo familiar ning equation, we have mxy dx plus nxy dy is equal to 0. So again, this we could count this as a homogeneous coefficient, or we could say that this is an equation that is not not defined by separable variables. Kay wala na separate ang ilang variables sa functions. So if the coefficients m and n in an equation of order 1 are both homogeneous functions and are of the same degree in x and y, by theorem 2.1 and 2.2, the ratio m over n is a function of y over x alone. Hence, kaning equation nato can be simplified into the form na dy over dx plus g y over x is equal to 0. This suggests the introduction of a new variable v by putting y is equal to vx. Then 2 becomes x dv over dx plus v plus gv is equal to 0, in which the variables are now separable. So this means when we have a variable na homogeneous, we have to substitute certain values and break down the equation para mahimo siya og separable. And just like before, once the variables are separable, pwede na yun mag-proceed sa variable separable na solving solution. So, ato siya i-sample sa nako ni sa 2.5. So, i-move sa nako ni dire. So, I'll teach you guys two ways on solving for elementary differential equation. Ang kaning first method is the textbook way, and a second method that I'll show later on is hopefully mas dali siya para sa inyo. Sige. So, for the textbook method, ako lang ni siya i-kuan. And then again, if na may questions, feel free to ask in case nawala mo sa atong pag-solve. Sige, so we have an equation, x squared minus xy plus y squared dx minus xy dy is equal to 0. So what can we note from this equation? We can say that the coefficients are homogeneous and of degree 2, where we have x squared degree 2, xy degree 2, y squared degree 2, and xy na degree 2. So since homogeneous sila in nature and same sila og degree, then we can assume a variable y is equal to vx. Or we could say v is equal to y over x. So this will be important later on, but ato to ni i-note. If homogeneous siya and of degree 2, kani ang pinaka-importante na dapat ato i-remember. So let's see, let's try and expand this equation. So we have x squared minus xy plus y squared minus xy. So ato i-substitute ang value for y to vx. So kani sa atong gamiton. So we have x squared minus x v, or let's say xv pardali, plus xv squared, para dito makuha ng atong orientation, dx minus x xv dy is equal to 0. So mato na ni siya simplify. So we have an equation x squared minus x squared v plus x squared v squared dx minus x squared v dy. Now if namoy equals 0. So if namoy nabantay ani na atay dy pero wala tay variable y. So para makuha nato ning dy, pwede nato ni siya i-derive ang atong y is equal to vx. And then since product rule man sila, we could say na dy over dx is equal to v plus x dv over dx. Pero atong gina-try og solve is dy. So para mawala ning dy, we could multiply both sides by dx para ma-cancel out ni sila. So we're left with dy is equal to v dx plus x dv. We can use this to substitute ang atong dy here. So we can expand this by saying we have x squared minus x squared v plus x squared v squared dx minus we have x squared v times v dx. Wait, let's take one. V dx plus x dv equal to 0. So now that we have this, we can try and simplify the equation again. So we have x squared minus x squared v plus x squared v squared dx minus x squared v squared dx plus I minus any minus we have x squared times x. This is x cubed v dv is equal to 0. Kung ato na yun siya combine, we can say na tayo x squared v squared dx and then x squared v squared dx. So ma-erase na to ni siya. Since mao ni ato makuha, we try and simplify. So we could say x squared minus x squared v dx minus x cubed v dv is equal to 0. So to try and simplify this equation, we could factor out x squared, or we could remove x squared. So let's say we remove x squared by dividing all terms by x squared. So what we're left with is we have 1 minus v dx minus x squared. So we're left with x v dv is equal to 0. So now that we've reached this point, let's see if we can try and simplify the equation. So we could say we can make this separable by na atay, let's say ato i-divide let's say sayon be inverse nato then multiply. Sige, so we could do this inverse multiply. So we can multiply both terms by dx dv nagi inverse, which will leave us with the equation 1 minus v. We're left with dx over x plus v dv over v minus 1 is equal to 0. So now that we're left with this equation, we can then say na separable variables na sila. Since ang aton dx over x lang ang present, then v dv over v minus 1, atong v lang ang present. This means that we can continue solving through separable variables. So atong progress dire is ang homogeneous na process. And then all the way here, we change the process to separable variables. Na a question so far or clarifications? Or taas lang gid ni siya? Sige, so for like clarification, so we can note this. Ato ni siya i-erase lang ni uban para padayon nato ni siya og solve. Sige, we can erase this. All right, so we now are left with dx over x plus v dv over v minus 1 is equal to 0. What this means is now that we've reached this point, we can integrate the equation. And so since naatay v over v minus 1, pwede natin siya i-factor out and simplify. So we could say this becomes v over v minus 1 will become, kung i-factor out nato, and then ato siya i-factor out o tarong. Unsa ganyan itong method? Double check sa na ako ang method ha, para di ko mawala. I double check. So this is v over v minus 1 dv. Yeah. Integrate nato by some terms, finding the integrand, and then long division nato, so we can arrive at 1 plus 1 over v minus 1. So if we can say na equaling sila through integrand and long division, therefore we could say the integral of dx over x plus the integral of 1 plus 1 over v minus 1 dy is equal to 0. So if we are to simplify this, we can say na the integral of dx over x is ln of x plus we have 1 dy, so this will become v plus dy over v minus 1. Kung ato siya i-try and separate, we could say this is ln v minus 1 equal to c. Now, pwede pa natin siya i-simplify. So, na technique na pwede natin ibuhaton para ma-simplify nato. One thing is, we know now we have a arbitrary constant na c. We can also say our arbitrary constant c can be equal to, let's say, ln of c. Kaya kung i-derive nato ni siya, wala siya variable na x, wala siya variable na y, mahimo japon siya og 0. So we could swap this value of c to ln c para ma-combine nato ni siya sa other side. of x. So we could say this is ln of c transpose. We could raise to e ang atong kuan, or exponent nato ang equation. So we exponent nato. So what this means is we're left with x plus e raised to v plus v minus 1. Oh, wait, ato sa equan guy. Ato sa breakdown. So this becomes e ln of x plus v plus ln of v minus 1 equal to e raised to ln of c. So again, e raised to ln of c, this means we could cancel this out, and then this becomes our value c. So more gyapon atong process, more mahimo gyapon siya balik og c. So we could also say this is c1 is equal to e raised to ln of c. Or kung idiretso lang nato, makikita gyapon nato siya na c siya. Next, we have ln x plus ln v minus 1. So then this will become x times v minus 1. And then ang mobilin dahil ani is e raised to v, which is equal to c. We can then simplify this since naatay value of v. Since napatay value of v, ato ni siya i-substitute with the value of atong y over x. So then this becomes x y over x minus 1 e raised to y over x is equal to c. Then what we can do is, i-pray na natin siya, we're left with y minus x e raised to y over x. E is equal to, is equal to, wait, e raised to yx is equal to c1. So c1 is siya. And then this will be our general solution. So then this will be our final answer, and then this will be our general solution when solving for homogeneous coefficients or homogeneous equations. Question so far, or basen libog gid ni siya para sa inyo? Okay, questions. Namay mo ask or namay gusto na mo ana? Nana no y minus x siya, sir. So y minus x man siya kay ang kanina to, or let's say kanisha, we have x times y over x minus 1. Multiply na to ang x ani, then multiply na tong x sa negative 1. So x times y over x, natay y, then x times 1 kay x. Sige. So na may other questions? Or taas ang gini siya? Katong sa dy dx, hindi mo kato, sir. So, ang kato lang is, ato lang siya gi-divide para makuha nato ni og kanina equation. Kay ato sa i-go back. So, ato sa i-erase ni. So, ato ni siya i-slow down para makuhaan. So, aman to, okay? Okay, so we have 1 minus v dx. Wait lang ba? Ato siya equal dire. 1 minus v dx minus xv dv is equal to 0. So, ato lang gi-inverse natin yung equation and then gi-multiply nato with dy over dx. So, let's say kung inverse nato, we're left with over 1 minus kani over 1. Multiply lang nato both sides with dv. So, we could say dv of dx. So, let's say multiply nato with dx, mawala ni siya. We're left with dv over 1 minus v minus 1 over xv. Since napatay xv dire, ato na i-multiply by v para mahimo siya og v dv over 1 minus v. And then since negative ni siya, we could also say na ibali nato ni, we could say this is v minus 1 para ma-change nato ang sign. Then this will become minus 1. Oh wait, this will become this will become dx over x, which is mao ni ang atong equation dire. I-shortcut ang nako kay more or less mo japan atong method for separable variables. If na remember lang ninyo. Same japan siya concept adto. So gidiretso lang nako. Na po may other questions or mag-proceed ta og another example. So gilahi lang nako ang signs kay ang original sign ani is 1 minus v. And then since dire is negative ni siya, ay positive na yun dire. Since negative man ni siya, then 1 minus v, ato i-change ang sign para instead of 1 minus v, atong kwaon is ang v minus 1. See. So, na may questions so far or other clarifications? Sige. So, ang kaning method atong gigamit is mao ni ang textbook nato na method. But there's another method na I think para sa ako is mas easier siya. So, I'll explain that one. Ako lang sa ikuha ang akong notes ani. Kani isa. Sige. So we'll try solving another equation, but this time we'll be using a different method. Na we can still arrive at the same answer, and I think less confusing siya compared ani. Or again, na sa inyo, sa inyong gusto na method inyong gamiton with regards to homogeneous. If kaning textbook or kaning isa. Sige. So let's say we have an equation. Okay, so let's say we have an equation dy over dx is equal to x squared plus y squared over xy. So if kaniyang equation ang ihatag, let's determine unsa ni siya na differential equation. What we can notice at the beginning is we have x squared, so degree 2. We have y squared, which is degree 2, and then xy na degree 2. Since pwede man ni siya i-spread dy dx, we can say na homogeneous sila. Now, unsay other method nato pwede buhaton? We could, so again, like previously, we can say na if homogeneous ni siya, we know na if homogeneous siya, we need an equation na y is equal to vx. Kani ang pinaka-importante guys, kay if maka-remember lang mo ani, ma-derive ninyo ang other solutions. Sige. So one, what do we know na or what do we need to do sa atong homogeneous? Kailangan nato i-transform nato ang y to v para mahimo natin siya og separable variables. So we could try and do this faster by saying v is equal to y over x. And then i-simplify din natin ang equation na ang mogawas is y over x. So what do I mean by this? Let's try and simplify this equation. So we could say y squared plus x squared plus y squared over xy. So we could say na this is x squared over xy plus y squared over xy. Diba? Same Japan sila o concept. So if we're to say this, we could try and simplify this. So we could say x squared over xy, ma-cancel out. So we are left with x over y plus y squared, cancel out nato ni, and we're left with y over x. Y over x. So if namoy nabantay, we're left with one side that has y over x. Pero what about kaning isa x over y? We could change this by saying y over x na gi-inverse plus y over x. So after seeing this, you can know this na natin y over x and y over x. So what we could do from here is we have dy over dx. So we have v inverse plus v. Di ba pwede man nato na siya buhaton o ginana? Sige. So what about kaning dy over dx? If ato mo remember, if we derive this equation, we're left with dy over dx product rule. So we have v plus x dv over dx. So since same ni sila concept, we can substitute this value for this. So we could say this is v plus x dv over dx. If we try and simplify this equation, we have v and we have v. Next, we're left with x dv over dx is equal to v inverse. So what can we do? We can inverse this equation. So we could say this becomes dx over x dv is equal to v. And then multiply both sides by dv. And then we're left with, para maklaro na to, ato siya this means we are left with the equation, wait lang ba? Dx over x is equal to v dv. So question, mas familiar ni siya na equation or dili?
Familiar sir sa separable functions.
Hmm. So this means instead of katong taas-taas nato na process na i-distribute ning dy over dx, pwede nato ni siya try og simplifying equation, quote nato ang y over x, and then try and simplify na in ani na degree. Which is para sa ako a bit faster and a bit easier na method. So what does this mean? This is our separable variable na equation. So this means everything else that we did here, everything else we did here at this point, compared to earlier, this is our homogeneous na process. Which means at this point, we'll be doing the separable variable na process. So, namoy questions regarding sa kaning parts sa homogeneous na process or medyo nakuha ra siya? So again, ato lang i-note is ang pinaka-importante na equation ani na homogeneous is kaning y is equal to vx. Kay kaning v over y over x ma-derive nato ni siya. Ang kaning dy over dx ma-derive po nato ni siya based off of this one equation. Again, para sa inyo, pwede po ninyo i-memorize. Pero if ever na malimtan ninyo, just remember na y is equal to vx, ma-derive na ninyo ang uban based off of this. So, if wala na yung questions, ato na siya i-padayon og solve. Wait, dili ka ni. So, ato na siya i-erase, and then ato na yun siya i-sulod ang atong new equation or our separable variable na equation. So, we have dx over x is equal to v dv. Erase na ako ni. At this point, pwede natin ni siya integrate. We're left with ln of x is equal to, sakto ba ko? This is v squared over 2. So v squared over 2 plus c. So again, ang pwede po natin ibuhaton is we can also say na c is equal to, or we could say c1 is equal to ln of c. You could say this kay ato lang siya ipakita later on na makatabang ni siya og solve sa atong equation. Wait, ln of c. C1 na lang ni kani kay c. So what can we do with this equation? So we can do two things. Para dali, we could transpose. Oh, wait lang be. Basta na ko yung mali dali. Sakto. So there's two things we can do. We can transpose ln of c to the other side. So we could say ln of x minus ln of c is equal to v squared over 2. Now what we can also do is we could say na negative c is equal to ln c1. So instead of ato ni siya minus, pwede nato ni siya plus. Ang importante na to atong ma-remember is arbitrary constant ni siya. As long as wala siya gi-mix with other variables, anything goes sa yaha. Okay, once i-derive nato ni siya, mahimo siya og 0. So if we are able to do this, we could simplify this by multiplying this by both sides with 2. Ma-cancel out nato ni siya. So this means we would be left with 2 ln of x c1 is equal to v squared. Since v squared ni siya, we could square root both sides and we'll be left with dili lang sa taas. We'll be left with v is equal to the positive negative value of the square root of 2 ln x c1. So we also need to note that v is equal to y over x. So substitute this for y over x is equal to, again, the positive negative value of the square root of 2 ln of x and c1. Distribute nato ang x to both sides. Mawala ni siya. We have our final answer, which will then become y is equal to x times the positive negative value of the square root of 2 ln x c1. Since not a value of y, this means this will become our final answer or our general solution for the differential equation. So so more or less this will be covering our homogeneous na solving. So far now my questions or clarifications or kasabot na ang topic or basin libog lang gid siya. So man guys, para at least kabulusad ko if kailangan pa ta mag add og more problems or pwede ta mag proceed. Eh, alam ko lang, unsay mga questions na inyong gusto ikuan. Or gusto mo og another example.
Another example, sir, para makakuha, sir.
Sige. So ato sa ni erase. So dili na ako ni siya i-erase kaya this will be our key points lang gid siya. So erase na to ako ni erase na to ni sige. So we'll have another example kaning isa. We have y x minus y over x squared. Sige, so how do we determine if this is homogeneous? Kung i-distribute na to ang y between these two, we have a degree 2 and a degree 2 divided by x squared, which is also a degree 2. Since both are homogeneous and of degree 2 or both have the same degree, we can say homogeneous ni siya. If homogeneous ni siya, in-note lang nato nasad nato ni y is equal to vx. Ang pinaka-importante, y is equal to vx. So again, what we can do is ato siya i-change or ato i-simplifying equation na mabilin og y over x para i-substitute nato with the value of v. So let's say this becomes we can distribute this. We can say this is xy minus y squared over x squared. We could say this is xy over x squared minus y squared over x squared. Simplify nato ni, we could say this is y over x minus y over x nagi square. Kung makita na ninyo ni, we have y over x, y over x. We can simplify this by saying this is v minus v squared. Since that dy over dx, substitute nato ni siya. So we have v plus x dv over dx. Since the same variables in v, we can cancel this out and we're left with x dv over dx is equal to negative v squared. So again, we can do the same thing as before. We can inverse both sides. So we're left with dx over x dv is equal to negative 1 over v squared inverse. Actually, didn't siya negative yeah. 1 over v squared yapan siya. Then we can multiply both sides by dv. Cancel out ni. And we're left with the equation dx over x is equal to the negative value of dv over v squared. And then this will become our separable variable na equation. So, na question so far or proceed tata? Wala nawala aning apart. So again, reminder lang, this is our homogeneous na process. Okay, after na yun ani is our separable variable na process, which is going to be the core concept sa homogeneous. Wala may question sa pagkuha nato ang atong separable equation or na may clarifications. Sige, kung wala, we can proceed. So now that we have this, ato na ini siya i-parayon og solve. So ato sa ni i-erase. So that means we are left with dx over x is equal to negative 1 over v squared dv. Integrate both sides. So we're left with ln of x. So since v ang atong ginakuan, we can also put rc sa left side. So then we could say this is plus ln of c is equal to double check sa nako integral ani. We're left with 1 over v. So since this is 1 over v, we can simplify this. We could say this is ln of xc equal to 1 over v. Inverse both sides. We're left with 1 over ln xc is equal to v. So now that we have v, we can then substitute our value of v. So over here, we could say this is y over x is equal to 1 over ln of xc. Multiply both sides by x, we're then left with y is equal to x over ln of xc. Then this will be our final answer. So this will be our final answer, and this will be our general solution for the homogeneous equation. So, question so far. Okay ra ang homogeneous? Mas okay ni siya nga method or gusto or magbalik ta sa textbook method nato? Unsay mas sayon para sa inyo ha?
Second sir.
Sa'yo ni siya, sir, kay
Mas
dili
sayon ni siya.
itaas.
Sige. So kana lang inyo i-practice. So again, ang inyong para ma-reiterate, ang steps nato ani is i-simplify nato ning equation or i-simplify ning polynomial para makita nato ang y over x. Substitute ang value sa y over x with v. Substitute ang atong dy over dx with atong value here. So again, since constant ni siya, kaning value dili ni siya ma-change. Okay, gina-base natin ni siya sa atong equation na only for homogeneous. Once we simplify ninyo ni, kuha ninyo ang equation na separable variables. From there, kablo na mo mag-proceed. After mo proceed ninyo, substitute ninyo yung value of v to y over x, and then i-finalize ninyo ang equation. So hopefully na nakuha ra ni siya. I think ang number one yun ninyo ni practice is ang separable variables, pero I think kaya ra gyapon ninyo. Sige. So if wala na questions, we can proceed to our next topic, which will then be exact equations, which is para sa ako mas dali siya in a sense. At least para sa ako, mas dali po ni siya. So what is an exact equation? An exact equation, ang pinaka-shortcut ako maingon is if kuha nato ang derivative sa atong function of m and our function of n, if equal sila og partial derivative, then we can say na exact equation sila. So ato sa i-discuss kadali. So exact equations. So in the previous equation or in the previous section, it was noted that when an equation can be put into this form, ax dx plus by dy is equal to 0, they are a set of solutions that can be determined by integration. So this idea can be extended to some equations to the form of mxy dx plus nxy dy, which is our homogeneous or equations na dili siya separable, which is noted here, in which separation of variables may not be possible. So suppose that a function f of x of xy can be found that has for its differential the expression m dx plus n dy, which is shown here. Then we can determine that f x of y is equal to c, or its arbitrary constant, which defines implicitly a set of solutions of the first equation for our equation na kani follows that our derivative of f is equal to 0. Now, derivative of f is equal to 0. Okay, if i-derive nato ang arbitrary constant, we are left with the value 0. Or in view number 2, we have the partial derivative of f is equal to m dx plus n dy, which is also can be also be written as m dx plus n dy is equal to 0. So for exact equations, two things are needed. One, to find out under what conditions on m and n a function f exists, such as its total differential is exactly m dx plus n dy. And second condition, if these conditions are satisfied, to actually determine the function f, if a function f exists such that m dx plus n dy is exactly the total differential of f. We can call equation 1 an exact equation. So to simplify this, if we have a function f, if we partially derive it, we can say na f is equal to 0. Or we could say f is equal to a variable constant na ay df din eh. Df is equal to 0 and f is equal to c. But we also know that f is equal to m dx plus n dy. So this means if kuha nato ang partial derivative of f with respect to x, which is kani, we could say na n with the partial derivative f with respect to y is equal to our function n, which also means na I think wala pagi about the page, which also means na if exact ang equations, we could say na ang partial derivative of m with respect to y is equal to our partial derivative of n with respect to h. So now nag partial derivative nato ni kay ang atong function of m has two variables x and y, and our n function also has two variables na x og y. So again, a partial derivative nato kay we're only deriving one variable, which is for our function m, we'll be deriving with respect to y. And for our value, or for our function n, we'll be partially deriving with respect to x. Which means if we find these partial derivatives, dapat exact ni sila, which can also be known as the testness of exactness, which is we'll be testing if the equation is exact. And if exacting equation, from there we can solve na, or we can determine na the differential equation is equal. Now, one thing to note before we proceed, partial derivative of m over partial derivative of m with respect to y is equal to the partial derivative of n with respect to x. If we remember earlier or above, if nabantay ninyo, ang partial derivative of or atong m is equal to the partial derivative of f with respect to x. N is also the partial derivative of f with respect to n. If atong i-note exact ang equation, we can solve or we can find the general solution through one method only, which is we could solve from one side of the equation or the other side of the equation. Kung i-solve nato ni kay if i-solve nato ning duha ka functions for the general solution, dapat equal ang ilang mahatag na general solution. Since exact equation ni sila. So I think napatay manote dire sa last. So kani ang theorem 2.3. If function n, partial derivative of m and partial derivative of n with respect to y and x are continuous functions of x and y, then a necessary and sufficient condition that m dx plus n dy is equal to 0 be an exact equation is that partial derivative of m with respect to y is equal to the partial derivative of n with respect to x. Now again, basin libog ang explanation ani. So ato ni siya further explain through examples. So let's say we have an equation 3x xy minus 2 dx plus x cubed plus 2y dy is equal to 0. Sige, so short review. Based off of aning equation, can we say this is separable or dili? Based sa initial view sa equation. So mabantay ninyo na ay x and y, and then na ay x and y. Which means now we can't separate this equation, so we can solve through the method of separable variables. So another question, based atong topic ganina, homogeneous ni siya nga differential equation or dili?
Delete, sir.
Mm. We can say na dili kay lahi sila og degree kung i-expand nato. 3x xy, this is a degree 3 minus 2 3x. So we can say this is a degree 1. Kay x raman ang present dire. So same thing here, we have a degree 3 and a degree 1. Since dili sila same og degree throughout, dili siya homogeneous. So the question is, how do we determine if exact sila? So ato lang i-remember ang theorem, which is the partial derivative of m with respect to y is equal to the partial derivative of n with respect to x. So what do we know about this equation? We know na this is m, and we know this is n. So if the partial derivative of m with respect to y, we have ito na siya simplify. So we have m, which is 3x squared y minus 6x, and our n, which is x cubed plus 2y. So we have the partial derivative of m with respect to y. We have 3x squared y, ma-derive nato ni siya. We have 3x squared minus 6x. Since walay value na y, we could say na this is 0. So then this will become our partial derivative of m with respect to y. So on the other side, we have the partial derivative of n with respect to x. So we have x cubed, or we could say this is 3x squared plus 2y, walay x, so this is 0. Which means, kung you simplify nato, we're left with 3x squared. Since equal ni sila, we can then say na this is an equal equation na differential equation. So this is our test of exactness. So since we know na exact ni siya, what are the key points that we need to remember for exact equations? We need to know a few things. So we have our variables here. So we need to remember that uh, f is equal to c, and we also need to know na uh, we also need to know na the partial derivative of f with respect to x is equal to m, and our partial derivative of f with respect to y is equal to n. So again, if we remember, pwede natin siya i-solve ang exact equations by answering only one side of the equation. So example, we'll try and use one side. We will say, let's say for example, we'll use sige gamit sa book para makuha na to. 8, so m. All right. So sa book kay gi-answer na siya og one side. So we can determine this later on. So for the book, we can start with m. So if we determine m, we can say na the partial derivative of f with respect to the partial derivative of x, or the partial derivative of f with respect to x is equal to m. Kung kani ang atong m, kani, so we could say this is 3x squared y minus 6x. Now, unsa nato ni kuha ang value na f? We can integrate uh wait lang ato sa i-clean gamay. We have this dx and integrate. So again, we'll only be integrating with respect to x, which means we can get the function f is equal to 3x cubed y over 3 minus 6x squared over 2 plus. So kanya atong i-note, ang atong f is equal to our arbitrary constant. So what unta na yung mabilin dire sa atong potential na arbitrary constant? We can leave a function t with respect to the opposite na variable na what nato nagamit. So example, we with respect to x, so we could say this is t y. So now no ty ni siya. We can say now we have a function t with respect to y. Kay if we solve for the other equation, this will be our bali. I don't say other explanation, honey. We can say na our function ty is our murag joint link between the two functions na m o n. So makita nato ni karon. For example, we have this. Ito siya i-simplify. We have f is equal to x cubed y minus 3x squared plus ty. So pwede natin siya i-derive, but since not I t with respect to y, we can derive this, or we could partially derive it with respect to y. So this means we have the partial derivative of f with respect to y is equal to derivative nato. So y is 1. So we have x cubed minus wait, dili ba ni 3? 2 din ni. We have 2x squared double check sa ako ha. Sakto. We have x squared minus, i-derive nato ni siya ang y since wala y dire. This is 0 plus t prime of y. So, since gi-derive nato ni siya with respect to y, we could also notice na this is familiar. Ang atong partial derivative of f with respect to y is our value n, which means we can substitute this with our value here na n, which means we get x cubed plus 2y is equal to x cubed plus t prime of y. If mo notice in yung same terms, we can remove this and we're left with ang atong variable na t prime y or dali lang sa taas para ma-send na to ni. We're left with t prime y is equal to 2y. Pero atong pangitawon is ang ty. So this means we can integrate both sides with respect to y. We are left with t y is equal to 2y squared over 2 or is equal to y squared. Since na natin y squared, we can then say kanina equation, we can simplify this by saying f is equal to x cubed y minus 2x squared plus atong ty, which is y squared. Atong value of f is our arbitrary constant, so this then becomes c is equal to x cubed y minus 2x squared plus y squared. Then this will become our final answer. So question so far.
Sir, question sir sa ano itong minus 6x squared over 2 sir. Anong negative 2x squared siya sir?
Kaya sakto din siya 3 day gini. Lagi kita ganyan. So 3 day ni. Nakalagay ko 3.
Okay sir, thank you sir. Yeah, sir.
Lagi ito yung alapag ko. So kana. So ang ako lang i-reiterate. This is our final answer. If nabante ninyo, igoro ta nag-solve through one side of the equation since exact mani sila. So what if i-try na to siya i-solve through the other side? So ato sa ni note, pwede natin i-note dire. We have c is equal to x cubed y minus 2x squared plus y squared. We can solve from the other side, and then instead of us saying na solving, we could say mao ni atong checking. So example, ato na siya i-erase. So dapat ang makuha nato na answer is kani. So we'll use the same
One sir,
method.
negative 3x squared sir.
Asa.
Ang katong sa x squared ito sir. Na 3x squared instead of negative 2. Ang katong na-come up na concept was C.
Wait lang. Sa asa na part dili dapit?
Kada nang sa last sir, kanay mo bitong gi-right sa lower right.
Kani siya c is equal to x cubed y minus 2x. Kani siya?
O kana sir, kay ang gikan ba ang negative 2x sa 1 sir? Negative x ay 6 negative 6x squared over 2. So mo to tong correct na negative 3 siya.
Ay, sakto. So 3 ni siya. So yeah, thank you. So ato siya ikuan. So this is c is equal to x cubed y minus 3x squared plus y squared. Sige. So kani dapat ang atong ma-derive na answer. So we'll be doing the exact same process. So we have ato na yung buhaton is we have the partial derivative of f with respect to y, which is equal to n. So atong n is x cubed plus 2y. So we have x cubed plus 2y. So ato remember, this is dy, and then we will integrate with respect to dy. So we have f is equal to, well, y, so we could say this is x cubed y plus 2y, or we could say this is 2y squared over 2 plus, since the partial derivative nato with respect to y, we could say this is our t x. Now we can simplify this. So ito na ako ni. We can simplify this by saying this is y squared. And then aton kailangan is ato i-solve ang value of tx. So since x ni siya, we could partially derive with respect to x. So we have the partial derivative of f with respect to x is equal to, kani we have x cubed y with respect to x. So this is 3x squared y. And then this is 0, since walay x, plus t prime of x. Now again, if familiar Japanese siya, we have the partial derivative of f over the partial derivative of f with respect to x, which is our value m. So we can substitute this for 3x squared y minus 6x is equal to 3x squared y plus t prime of x. Since I type 3x squared y, we can cancel this and we're left with t prime of x is equal to negative 6x. To get the value of tx, we can integrate both sides. So we're left with t of x is equal to 6x squared over 2, or let's say 6, ato siya ikon para ma-expand na to. 6x squared over 2 negative, or we could say this is negative 3x squared. Ato na yun siya i-substitute dire. We could say this equation then becomes f is equal to x cubed y plus y squared minus 3x squared. Substitute our value for f for c, so our final answer will then become, there's almost 3x squared. Our final answer here will become c is equal to x squared, x cubed y plus y squared minus 3x squared. This will be our final answer. And if mabantay ninyo, same dyan pa siya answer sa other side sa equation. Which means na sakto ang atong answer sa beginning. So gibali, nag-check lang ta if sakto ang atong answer. So kani ang method for solving for exact equations. Now may questions or clarifications ani or masabtan ra? Idi nabog ang gamitan ni mo aning lessons. Oo. So nagamit ko og elementary differential equations, and then after sa class I'll send or I'll attach to the Google Classroom ang additional materials para maka-study mo. Kay ang homogeneous na method na ako is nagamit ko og other material para mag-solve ana. So questions regarding sa exact equation? Or so far okay ra siya? Sige, so mautana lang ko sa inyo before ta mag-try and proceed. Kay ang atong topics for today is exact og homogeneous. Unsay mas sayon para sa inyo, ang homogeneous na method or kaning exact?
Sa kuha sir kay kanang exact sir kay one side ra ang i-solve dili siya tanan.
Kana lang gyud ang tsada sa exact. Ang other side is for checking. So since hapit naman ta mag 7:30, so pwede na ta mag-break para maka-dinner mo or makapaulay ka jud. Unsay inyong gusto i-review nato after sa break? Magbalik ta sa homogeneous or mag-solve pa ta og exact equations?
Mag-solve pa sir sir, isa ka equation.
Saan sa exact?
Yes sir.
Sige. So we can solve for one more na exact after sa break, and then if goods pa mo, we can go back to homogeneous and ato siya i-try og solve again. Or if okay pa mo sa kuan, we can solve for two more equations na exact. Kay Ang importante lang ginani is magkuha lang ninyo ang process of solving. Which is katong reminder po na ko sa inyo for quizzes or assignment later and seat works, I'll only ask for or I'll only give one equation per topic. Kay medyo taas-taas lang gini siya nga mga procedures na I think one equation is good for one topic. So, naka-prepare sa ko assignment sa inyo ha na ang isa ka question is homogeneous and one more is exact. Pero magpanay dyan pa ta og discuss para makuha ninyo ang flow. So far wala na may questions or clarifications kay pwede rin ta mag-break kadali. Sige, kung wala, 7:25, balik lang mo by 7:55, and then by 8, we'll start reviewing again. So we'll start with the exact equation, na lahi ng example. And then if medyo libog pa siya, we can continue from there or balik ta sa homogeneous. So I'll see you guys later and enjoy the break lang sa.